I love flying the DJI FPV for fun. I've had this replaced 3 times. Yes, I've had lots of crashes. We'll get into that. The goggles have been replaced once, as has the remote too. Let's talk about this system as a whole, as like a long-term thoughts and review. From the brief experience I've had in the FPV community, this thing isn't really liked. A lot of people say it's not a proper FPV drone. But with that being said, if you want to get into FPV and you're terrified by all the FPV options that are out there and the binding process and LiPo batteries and all that kind of thing, like I was, this is absolutely what you need to buy and try. Now, I've been flying regular drones for years, and they're just not that fun to fly anymore. That wore off pretty quickly. They're just another tool that I have to capture video and content for weddings, for real estate, whatever it is I'm shooting. Those drones are a tool for doing that. Years and years ago, I wanted to be a pilot. It was something I never ended up doing. In hindsight, I probably should have, but I didn't. But when I fly this, it makes me feel like I'm a fighter pilot. As sad as that is to say, that's exactly what it feels like flying when I have the goggles on and you're just in the zone. It's a lot of fun. Not to mention, it's incredibly fast. Most people in general have seen regular drones now flying, like a Mavic Mini or a Mavic Air or a Mavic Pro. They've seen them flying about, they know of them. But the first time you show them this thing and you fly this thing, they are very much amazed by the speed that this thing can achieve. I've had, I want to say, 6 big crashes with this, 3 of which have resulted in it being damaged to the point where it did no longer fly, the arms were broken or something bad had happened to it, and it wouldn't take off anymore. And I had to send it away to get repaired. Now, I did buy a refresh when it first came out because I anticipated this happening. This has a big learning curve, which we'll get into. But every time I've sent it away, I'm in Canada, it's had to go to Texas. That's where the repair center is. And the way that you basically set up the repair, you go online with DJI, you either chat with them or you fill in a form and they'll send you an RMA, you package it up in the box, send it through UPS. And in my case, round trip from sending this away to having it back in my arms was no less than 2.5 to 3 weeks every single time. Now, that's probably because I'm in Canada. And every time I've sent it away, I've been under the impression I'm going to be using Refresh to get a new one. But I haven't used Refresh once yet. Every time I've sent it away, the repairs have been cheaper. Like, I think I've paid most $100 to have this repaired. So I've never had to use my Refresh. And on top of that, when you actually get it repaired, they don't repair it. They just ship you a brand new unit. Every time I've had mine shipped back to me, it's been a sealed FPV unit in a box. Not a refurbished one, a sealed one. And I know it's a brand new drone because there's a different serial number that I have to re-register with Transport Canada every single time. So that's a really good thing to be aware of. I would say you probably don't need Refresh if you're getting this. Now, all of those crashes that I had were actually my fault. They weren't a result of the aircraft doing something wrong. It was all just me crashing into something, hitting the ground too hard, being too close to the ground, or whatever. They're all my fault. One of those crashes was substantial. It hit a tree really, really hard, and it still flew completely fine after the fact. The battery popped out, but yeah, no issues there. So it can take a beating too. Another time I crashed it and thought it was completely gone. I had no idea where it was, couldn't find it, was spending hours looking for it, like 2 hours. And then I learned about the Find My Drone feature, which you can access in the goggles there, and it shows you, I think, the last 30 seconds of your last flight. So that's really useful to pinpoint areas where you see it go into the tree line or something like that. Also, another good tip for you is you can map one of these buttons. I think I double tap C1 and it makes the drone beep really, really loudly. So if you kind of have an idea where the drone is, if you've crashed it, it will beep, and then you can probably hear it and find it a little bit easier too. Whenever I first got this, I kind of thought that it would open the door to the FPV world for me, and I'd learn to fly on this and then want to move on to other greater and bigger, well, smaller and lighter drones. And that's what started to happen. I started to look at the other options out there, like the ready-to-fly combos that you can buy. But the LiPo battery part still intimidated me. That combined with the fact the controller that I wanted at the time, the Crossfire 2, I think it was called. It was back ordered everywhere. You couldn't buy it. I wanted something that was compatible with the goggles that was really well reviewed, and that was the one that kept popping up. But it was sold out everywhere. This was in and out of being repaired all the time. I just ended up not buying anything and not getting into that world, thankfully. I think until a company comes out with something like DJI has come out with here, where everything just binds straight out of the box, the batteries are incredibly safe, reliable. You're not really going to have any issues with them. There's like a multi-charger here that you can charge up to 3 batteries at once. You plug it in just to an outlet. Until a company can come out with everything that's as reliable and as safe as DJI has, I think it's going to the FPV world is just going to keep pushing people away like myself who just don't want to have to get involved with that kind of thing. And that's why this system for me was perfect. Now, a quick look on Get FPV shows me that in the past few months, a lot has changed and a ton of companies now come out with setups that you can buy and they bind it all for you. It literally turns up at your house, you plug in the batteries, you charge them, and it's ready to fly. Everything is set up for you, which is great. The LiPo batteries obviously still are something to be concerned with and are concerning for me. But it does look like things have progressed. Now, I can't help but feel that the DJI FPV had a big part in that. And no matter the hate that this gets in the FPV world, this is probably shaking things up a little bit for the better. Kind of got off on a bit of a tangent there, but ultimately, I didn't end up buying any other FPV drones. And I now just fly this because I really like to fly. It's great fun. And for that purpose, for me, it fits the bill perfectly. I'm not claiming to be a great FPV pilot. I'm not flying through tiny gaps or doing crazy tricks. But if you enjoy doing what you're doing, and for me, it's just like a little hobby, then surely that's all that matters. And I enjoy it, and you probably will too if you just want to fly this for fun. Don't feel bad about doing that. You don't have to get this with the intention of learning FPV and going into the FPV world. This can stand alone as just a drone that you fly up in the air as a hobby. If I'm going to a new place that I haven't been before and the flight restrictions allow it, I will take this with me. Going to the cottage, going to the in-laws, friend's house that has nice big open fields. All those places are great for flying. I'll throw this in the case in the back of the truck and bring it with me for a flight. Speaking of which, this is the Nanook case. I'll link it below for you. This is what I carry my drone in and everything I need. So I can get my goggles in here, the remote, a couple of sets of props, 3 batteries, a GoPro, which we'll talk about more in a bit, all my NDs, all the cables I need, everything like that fits into there nice and easily. And it's a solid case. Nanook, these kinds of cases are used for carrying around guns and that kind of thing. So that's a solid case. It's a great option for you. It's waterproof if you're looking for a case for the FPV. It does come with the foam inside that is all cut out perfectly for this. Now, I actually cut it out a little bit more to fit things around a little bit differently in there, but highly recommend that case if you're looking for something to carry your DJI FPV. Now, I only have 3 batteries, and for me, that's enough. I get about 5 minutes of flight time off of one of these batteries, or if I'm flying just full send, as fast as I can possibly go, then you'll probably get about 3.5 minutes out of one of these batteries. But for me, and when I'm going to a new place, just flying for fun, that is more than enough. I'm impressed by these batteries. There's no issues with these. None of my batteries have swollen so far, which is really good. And I would highly recommend you grab this. I talked about it earlier. This allows you to charge the 3 batteries, not at once. It basically cycles through them. So it charges, you plug them all in there, and then you plug this in on the end, plug it into an outlet. It charges the one, then it charges the other, then it charges the other. I didn't have this to begin with, and I would end up having to charge the one, wait for it to be done, then plug in the next. And I did that a few times and then was like, nope, getting this, and you'll appreciate having this. In terms of the learning experience for me, to kind of go on from my video before, which I'll put up there, it took me about 5 or 6 full batteries of flying before I reached the point with this where, not in manual mode, in like regular mode, where I was like, okay, I'm not returning this, because up until that point, I just wanted to return it. I didn't feel comfortable flying it. I didn't think I was ever going to get comfortable flying it, but it took about 5 or 6 batteries before I was like, all right, it clicked, and it was fun. I did fly in the sim for quite a few hours. I can't remember exactly how many, but I'll echo my opinions from the previous video. You can fly in the sim if you want to, but you're going to do better just flying this in one of the automatic modes, the assisted modes, out in a big open field. You're going to learn more in that short amount of time than you will in the sim, because it's just in the real world, and you can gradually get up to manual just at low altitudes or high altitudes if you want to just be a little bit safer, obviously within the legal limit for you. But that's how you're going to learn more than being in the sim, in my opinion. A lot of people will say the opposite, and a lot of people have said the same. So I would try both and see which works better for you. For me, flying out in the real world worked better to learn more than in the sim. You got to push through that uncomfortableness that you have when you very first fly a drone. It happened years ago when I flew my very first Mavic, when I had the Mavic Pro 1. It was very uncomfortable to fly, and it takes a lot to push through that. But once you push through it, it just gets easier and easier. Now when it comes to flying, I do everything in manual because I got very used to and very comfortable flying it. The only things that aren't in manual are the takeoffs and the landings, just because you can be a little bit more precise with doing it in the non-manual mode, and it's easier to do it that way. So yeah, everything in manual mode now. When I very first started, I used these rates that someone was talking about in a video, and I got to say, They were great for when I started. They were a bit less responsive, and it just made things a lot less twitchy when you were flying with the drone. However, one crash made me realize that I'd gone past those rates, and my skill level was now above what those rates were allowing me to do. I wanted to pull out of a dive a little bit faster, closer to the ground, and the rates that I had weren't allowing me to do that. So I ultimately ended up going back to just the factory rates that come straight in the drone when it comes straight out of the box. And now that's what I fly in, and I'm very comfortable with those rates. I am probably at the point where I could go a little bit more responsive with the rates now, but yeah, we'll see if that changes in the future. But right now, out of the box, the factory rates, they're good for me. These crash bars are something I picked up very recently, and I've had one big crash with these on, and I gotta say, I do genuinely believe that these do a lot to strengthen the integrity of the drone, specifically the arms here. So a couple of the crashes I had cracked the arms, and yes, this thing is made entirely of it's a decent plastic, but it's still ultimately plastic, and plastic will break with enough force. Crash into a ground hard enough. One of my crashes was just straight down, and one of the arms just sheared completely off. Plastic broke clean through. It was hung on by the wires. So these basically clip on and create just a stronger drone. Like this, it feels tough on here. So I'd highly recommend. One of the very first things that you do buy when you buy an FPV is to buy these arms, attach them on there. The only pain is it doesn't fit in the Nanook, and that was part of the reason I had to cut out more things myself. Nothing really fits very well with these arms on there, and they're a pain to take on and off all the time. They're really hard to clip on and off, and you have to screw them in. So yeah, they're a pain to go on and off, but highly recommend these arms for improving the structural integrity of your FPV. After a while of flying this, I realized that the camera really wasn't that wide, and I could get better quality out of the camera, and I wanted better colors and that kind of thing. So I ended up buying a GoPro Hero 9, and I played around with both video and, yes, although I do love the wider view on the Hero 9 there, I did find it made it a little bit trickier to fly, a little bit less responsive, so it's something to bear in mind there. And ultimately, I ended up just going back to using the onboard camera. It's not a huge deal. I'm just flying it for fun now. I don't need to actually use the video. I will say there's a bunch of different mounts and things like that out there for that you can get to attach to this, and they screw in on the sides there. You can see there's the remnants of some left over. The ones from Amazon that I bought, they were really low quality. They didn't last very long. The best one I had was this one. Now I've obliterated it from a really bad crash. I'm sorry, Ken. Ken from Original Dobo sent me these through, and these are the best ones that I've used. The hardest plastic for sure. So if you're looking for a mount to the top of your DJI FPV, I highly recommend these ones from Original Dobo. I'll put up a link down below for those. You'll probably end up doing the same, and you'll buy all the ND filters and everything like that, and the GoPro, and you'll want to play around with all the different video widths and all that kind of thing. But for me, as I ended up just using this for fun, I fly it for fun, the onboard camera is really all I need. I can export a couple of clips if I want to share them or anything like that, but I didn't need anything else in the end. One issue I did actually have with this from the get-go, this would be sporadically, like one in 5 times, and the gimbal would just pan straight up or tilt just straight up automatically. No matter what I had it set to on here, no matter if I turned this and forced it to go down, it would just counter it and go back up. And I thought for the longest time it was a problem with the drone or the gimbal. So when I ended up crashing this, I just dealt with it. The way I dealt with it was I'd take the battery out, put a different battery in. I thought it was a battery problem. I don't know how or why, but that's the only thing I could get to fix it. Change the battery around and it wouldn't do it. And then that's when I'd fly. Then when I crashed the first one and got the second one, and the second one did it too, I figured it's got to be a firmware issue or something like that. So I kept updating. And then when I crashed the second one and the third one came and it still had it, I realized, no, it's got to be something else here. So I reached out to DJI, shipped away the controller on its own, and it was just as long to ship it away. And they ended up just replacing the controller completely. And since then, I've had no issues. So I think there was a problem with my controller with either the button here, which controls the angle. You have 3 different angles, or the dial here. So it was definitely one of those issues. Now I haven't had the issue at all. So if you do have that same issue, make sure you get this replaced. It was covered under warranty. I also had dead pixels appear in my goggles on the left eyepiece, and yeah, it didn't stop it from functioning properly. Like, it was just a white dead pixel that I had in there. But these things aren't cheap. And I reached out to DJI again, and it was replaced under warranty. So if you have issues, make sure you use your warranty. Yes, you have to send this away. And again, it was 3-week wait for a new set of goggles before I could fly it again. So it's a pain. But make sure you get things repaired under warranty if you do have any of the issues that I have. And finally, I want to talk about the range, because the range on this is claimed to be 6.2 miles. And I want to say I've got nothing close to this. And I think it's because of the way that I fly this. With the Mavic series, when you're testing their range out, like, you can get pretty close to what they say their range is. That range is obviously in optimal conditions, weather, line of sight, that kind of thing. I think that's because of the way that it's flown. It's very differently flown to a Mavic, which is just in the air. This is going up and down behind things, through trees, that kind of thing. So I'm not overly concerned with that. By comparison to what I know is out there when it comes to other FPV drones, this is still ridiculous in terms of range. So that is all my thoughts on the DJI FPV as like a long-term, from someone that is just a hobby flyer, someone that's not flying this for professional use. They're not going to be getting into any other FPV drones right now. I know I've said that. I'll probably end up going buying one now, won't I? Yeah, that's my long-term thoughts on it. Hopefully you got something out of this video. Appreciate you watching today. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.